Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you are about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man. Today I find myself on Medium, where indeed I am a member. You are free to, you are free to look me up, though I'm not sure if you'll find me, and I'm not even sure you'll like what I actually write over there. But anyway, this video isn't about me. It is about the ungovernable feminist, or or as she labels herself, an anarcho-feminist for intersectional liberation. Given the day this video comes out, I thought it would be fitting. It was either this or going through or reading over Rosa Luxemburg's Wikipedia article, and I thought this would be a better fit. My main channel already has a more uh, classical, or rather explores classical feminism to some degree, and this week, and I thought I would look at something that is and then looks at modern feminism for the for my for this channel. And as such, I've come across this article by the ungovernable feminist, which is called "As a Queer Woman, My Country is the World: Towards Women's and Queer Liberation Beyond Nations." I actually follow the ungovernable feminist, not necessarily on Medium. I might give her a follow here, but I know her primarily from Twitter, where she is known under the at Moonlight_Misfit, also Nina, and she's on Instagram as well, under the username AnFemFatale. Uh, and I have to say, she very much, that name, the ungovernable feminist. It's not just for show. With every post she makes quite clear where she stands and what her opinions are. You might remember how a few weeks or months ago there was some discourse within anarchist circles about abolishing time. That was her. That was that was her doing. So I very much tell you that she is indeed legit, and it's for that reason that I decided to look into her, look into her article. Or it is also for that reason. It should take about 7 minutes, so let's see. Got here this lovely picture. Protesters holding a banner that reads "Queer Solidarity Smashes Borders," and rainbow-colored smoke flares on Vauxhall Bridge in the wake of Trump's inauguration in 2017. I'm not sure where Vauxhall Bridge is. I would assume it's in the United Kingdom because Vauxhall is Vauxhall is actually, I think, the name Opel cars are sold within the United Kingdom, or it's the name Opel cars are sold, under which Opel cars are sold. I can't talk anymore. Yet I'm not sure if the background really looks very United Kingdom-ish. Never mind. Let's delve into the actual text. Reminiscing about the very roots of my journey as a political subject often leaves a bland taste in my mouth. My political radicalization has been a gradual, long overdue process, same, while conformity and obedience were deeply embedded stains on my youth. I apologize already to Nina, because I, I think I will comment on this text quite a bit, and also talk about my impressions and how they kind of parallel certain things within certain things within her development. I hope that's fine. I hope that's fine with her. And this thing about conformity and obedience, well, there was a certain, I kind of experienced that to some extent as well, but I saw it not necessarily as conformity and obedience to parents, but conformity or obedience to a specific set of prerogatives. And it would be through that set of prerogatives that maximal well-being could be obtained. Uh, I did and that's why, at least in my youth, when I noticed that I clashed with my parents, grandparents, or caretakers in general, it was always over always over these principles, and how they themselves weren't really weren't really following them, or thought they were thought they were above that. And I always wanted to challenge that. Like, what makes you better? What makes you what makes you worth going over them? And then I took some looks into the principles themselves and realized they're not actually as ironclad as they pretend they were. So, and I kind of had to also deconstruct myself and deconstruct those myself and come to my own uh, opinions and realizations. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, here. However, if there was one early spark of critical thought and rebellion that flared within me since my childhood, it was definitely my doubtful approach to national pride. Interestingly enough, even when my mind was still riddled with superstition and fear of an unproven divine authority, I couldn't grasp the concept of pledging unconditional allegiance to the part of the planet where one happens to be born. In mainstream political discourse, national pride is perceived as a spectrum, with patriotism and nationalism as its most familiar manifestations. While the average moderate tends to shy away from nationalism, as well as chauvinism, irredentism, and jingoism as its extensions, I think chauvinism and jingoism are somewhat sorry about that, are somewhat familiar to an Anglosphere audience. Irredentism might not. It's the idea that a nation can only be complete, can only be whole, can only achieve its full potential when it seizes all the land that was that was ever its own. Which, yeah, as you can imagine, leads to a lot of can lead to a lot of misunderstandings between neighbors, because a lot of parts of nations weren't always or sometimes parts of one nation, sometimes parts of others, and that you know and that always lead and it is philosophies like that that lead to a lot of conflict. Anyway, back to the text. Patriotism is almost universally encouraged in all spheres of life and deeply entrenched in our upbringing. Um, it is okay, and within this sphere, I have to say it's perhaps not necessarily patriotism as much as a specific understanding of territorialized legalism, as in people are tied to their laws, basically by default. They need those, they need those laws in order to function, in order to direct what it is that they, what their activities and what they can do, and as such, they place perhaps to some extent an undue amount of confidence within the entity of the state or of the nation, because they see that as a guarantor of their development. Whether or not that actually holds any truth is doubtful, given that given that and given various aspects of how laws manifest within everyday life, aspects of law enforcement, for example, and also the fact that international associations can have that same, can have similar values. The value of being a guarantor for various social, legal, economical precepts that allow for the building blocks people take for granted when it comes to when it comes to putting their life together. So while I get the opposite argument of what she's trying to say, I don't think it is always as legitimate as its supporters try to make it out to be. Moving ahead, many moderate and left-leaning actors in the political sense here, tend to paint a picture of patriotism as a wholesome amalgamation of universally desirable values, such as practicing road safety, caring for the environment, and protecting women and children in the community. Just like I said, legalism, legalism, but not necessarily giving them more autonomy. More like religious apologists' defensive approach to analyses that bring attention to the oppressive role of religion. The weaponization of patriotism in the othering of marginalized groups within and outside a country's borders is reduced to a bug rather than a feature. Yeah, I can't really defend that either. Misogynists, queerphobes, racists, abusers, and bigots of all sorts who remorselessly perpetuate violence under this label are not real patriots, or so we are told. Okay, yeah, this is a very good topic. It also comes up in a lot of meme formats where you're trying to compare two things. For example, in the debate about reforming capitalism, because there are people who say capitalism is broken and needs to be fixed, or capitalism is working exactly as it should be and therefore it needs to be taken down. I think Nina is trying to construct something similar, in which she says that, and she holds on one hand the moderates who say that patriotism isn't working as it should be and needs to be fixed, and she's going to present the argument of patriotism works exactly as it should be and that's why it needs to be taken down. Let's see. This is a typical no true Scotsman fallacy and a rather myopic attempt to depoliticize patriotism. Yeah, you can't really depoliticize something that necessitates political participation, let's be honest. It's like trying to say depoliticize banks, depoliticize churches, or even depoliticize freaking monarchies, which comes up a lot. Yeah, those entities are intrinsically political. Sorry to burst your bubble. In the context of actual political praxis and organization, the lines between patriotism and nationalism are blurred to the point of invisibility, and the former is often used as a euphemism for the latter. So, people being nationalists but hiding under a veneer of patriotism, I guess. Regardless of nomenclature preferences, there is a historical record of governments all across the authoritarian parts of the political spectrum catering to nationalist sentiments at the expense of women and marginalized genders' bodily autonomy, especially in the context of reproductive freedom. Oh yeah, definitely. From contemporary conservatism in the imperial core, i.e. Trumpism and Christian nationalism, very much so, to state socialism in the USSR in the wake of Stalin's abortion ban and natalist propaganda. I'm surprised you mentioned Stalin and not Mao, given it is under Mao that China's population literally exploded from 250 million to over 1 billion. Establishing pregnancy and childbearing as a duty to the nation was, is, and will always be a cornerstone of totalitarianism. Things liberals would agree, or claim they agree with. So, let's see how she spins this. Let's see how she brings anarchism more into this. I have had the misfortune to witness firsthand the pivotal role of weaponized national pride in the reification of gender roles, specifically with respect to reproductive labor. I should perhaps mention that I think she is Albanian. I think I read it at some point, but I'm not necessarily sure if that's where she's at. So just so you have an idea of what her background is. My formative years coincided with the decade-long reign of a right-wing government that aimed to spearhead and capitalize on the population's nationalist sentiments. The word feminism entered my vocabulary at a time when almost every TV program was interrupted by taxpayer-funded ads about the Macedonian. Oh, she's Macedonian, not Albanian. Fuck. Anyway, you get the idea. She's from the Balkans, which were very much a mess around the time, I was born, and perhaps around the time she was born as well. Macedonian government's initiatives to address the decreasing birth rates and boost population growth with a scanty parental allowance for a third child. Parental allowances are kind of lame, not gonna lie. Under the banner of securing the country's future and preserving its tradition of multi-child families. If you have a tradition of multi-child families, I don't know what to say about that. It's not that... no. The aggressively pro-natalist propaganda sought to demonize abortion and encourage young adult women to carry unplanned pregnancies to term, plunging headfirst into the world of unpaid domestic labor. Almost 7 years after the regime change, while the new government has liberalized abortion laws and mostly used a nominal veneer of LGBTQ acceptance for brownie points, the spirit of reactionary nationalism is still alive and well. From the ultras/hooligan scene to informal political groups, Every organized embodiment of nationalism and hardline patriotism presents an unequivocal threat to the safety and impediment to the liberation of women, queer people, and ethnic minorities. Actually, back when I still used Facebook somewhat regularly, I uh, and when I still kind of referred to myself as a centrist, I said that the birth rates kind of go from a dog whistle to a necessary evil, and that you need to assure to some extent a stable population, because things need people to work. So people have to come from from somewhere. But on the other hand, ever since I think I have a more nuanced understanding of what it actually means for things to work. And while I don't have, and while I don't really have an answer for that, I can say that I stand in opposition to what it is that she is presenting here, especially trying to take down ethnic minorities. You really should try to integrate those within your integrate those within your society. Showcase that that the values you care about and that supposedly also protect them do actually apply. This notion applies to the whole Balkan region, where the ever-looming ethnic tensions have produced a toxic puzzle of nationalism with the ostracization of undesirables as its crucial piece. Not exactly from the Balkans myself, but can confirm. A widely memified Serbian nationalist propaganda image depicts a heavily pregnant woman in a white dress and a muscular man touching her belly in front of the national flag. Oh yeah, I remember that. With the metaphorical 1,000 words it conveys narrowed down to 7 ones. She to bear children, he to defend. Such is the reality of nationalism. The tangible restrictions on people's freedom of movement imposed by borders find an echo in the reinforcement of equally rigid and binary gendered expectations. Yeah, I cannot counter that. A slightly deeper glimpse at the etymology of the main keywords at issue here betrays the inherent potential of national pride to be used as a bludgeon against those on the margins of a patriarchal society. There are lots of things that are taken for granted here, such as, for example, the word patriarchal, and how that, ties into the broader principles about living together and about building communities. I'm not exactly. She could probably. I kind of want to say that she should delve into those, but given you're already reading an article from the Ungovernable Feminist, it's likely readers already have some idea about it. Though I'm not necessarily sure I'm doing a good job at really presenting them. Let's start with some very on-the-nose details. The word patriotism literally shares the same root as patriarchy, which is the Greek word for father. I think it's actually the Latin word, but whatever. Moving ahead. In most European language, the derivative forms of the Latin word patria, i.e., fatherland, are colloquially used to denote one's homeland. Similarly, nation shares the same root as natalism, the Latin word for both, nasci. That is not a connection I made, and I quite often hear motherland as well. So, anyway, moving ahead. Time and time again, the nation-state has indeed proven itself to be judgeable by its cover. In its essence, it is a project that functions as an extended version of the bloodline and the nuclear family. Built upon discrimination by ancestry and allocating a duality of self-sacrificial duty according to one's assigned gender at birth. I would have some comments about the nuclear family, which is a much more recent historical phenomenon than nations are, but whatever. We're going modern feminism, so it's probably that even though she looks somewhat in the back, her focus point is still relatively modern. So let's see what she's cooking. I probably shouldn't use that metaphor here, but whatever. While those perceived as men are expected to show eagerness to lay down their lives on a hypothetical battlefield if push comes to shove, oh yeah, very much so, the ones perceived as women are pressured to put the preservation of the nation above their reproductive autonomy, health, and comfort. Therefore, militarism and low birth rate scaremongering are not bugs, but rather key features of nationalism. Okay. I'll make a note of that. Nation states offer a deeply conditional sense of belonging that doesn't extend to disruptors of cis heteronormative familism. I think she primarily means queer people here, but she also talked about ethnic minorities, which which could still fit into a cis heteronormative framework. Moving ahead, the unwritten Universal Manifesto of Nationalism positions queer people and women who reject the institution of marriage and biological motherhood as inherently treasonous. I dare say, let us be traitors then. Showing disloyalty to nationalism at every turn is a worthy life mission for all women and queer people from countries located in the imperial core or unaffected by imperialist aggression. Here comes the most delicate question. What about so-called left-wing nationalism as a solution for those on the receiving end of ongoing imperialist and settler colonial violence? Oh yeah, the question of reform over revolution, I see. And, as I said, if one were to generalize or transform the idea of a nation in order to refer to a legalism that is individualized by territory, that is very much something that is doable, and one could wonder why it hasn't seen a broader application, given that many other languages or many other words shift in their meaning. Punk, for example, when it was first created, used to mean sex worker. So, yeah, the obvious answer here is that there is some kind of force, some kind of semantic motivator that keeps the meaning to the that keeps the meaning focused upon genetic proliferation, and I think that is what this lady is about to delve into. Needless to say, it is every leftist's responsibility to support people for whom ethnicity is a crucial axis of oppression in their struggle for national liberation. So I guess they're talking about leftists having a duty of protecting people of different ethnicities, which I agree. What is more, feminists and queer liberationists worldwide ought to raise awareness about racialized women and LGBTQ people's suffering at the hands of imperialist aggressors and take a stand against pinkwashing as a particularly insidious tactic implemented by occupying regimes. Oh yeah, that's very much true. Contrary to popular belief, especially among authoritarian leftists, these goals are entirely compatible with unwavering anti-nationalism. Okay. National liberation is an urgent plight for the survival of people with shared ancestry, aiming to restore their basic human dignity, safety, and livelihood. Okay, where does she's talking positively about any aspect called national, but go on. Above all, it entails fighting for intact homes with tables full of food, carefree childhoods for children, functioning hospitals and schools, and tranquil nights without the piercing sounds of air raids. Things much more valuable and palpable than the honor of a nation as a social construct. Okay, yes, I very much agree with that. However, that doesn't necessarily come from the strength of the military, the physical strength of a nation. It comes more from its diplomatic, soft strength. If no one had an army, armies would not be needed, is an anti-militarist thought I have entertained for years before I encountered it in David Graeber's writing. And the same goes for nationalism as a wider concept. It is abundantly simple to endorse national resistance from colonial powers without ceding ground to a nationalist framework, as nationalism is the core motive that breeds ethnic subjugation and genocide in the first place. So a colonizer oppresses someone because oppress someone because of their genetic stock, so to speak. So those people of that genetic stock choose to instead embrace their own, national identity, and so you have that, and so you have a a specific framework that emerges within this conflict. As a matter of fact, Zionism is a perfect cautionary tale about the potential of an ideology starting off as nationalism of the oppressed to devolve into a nationalism of a ruthless oppressor as soon as it gains the upper hand. Yeah, very topical, very topical example, at least at the time this video is recording. While nationalist sentiments that arise as a response to oppression aren't morally equal to those of the oppressors, I very much agree. Nationalism is ultimately, in the famous words of Audre Lorde, I assume that's how that name is spoken, the master's tool that will never dismantle the master's house. Rather, it builds houses for new masters, and the idea is that these new masters that would emerge would would keep the old masters would keep the previous masters at bay, and not turn against their servants. However, that's a troubling, if I may say so myself, hypothesis that doesn't always hold up. It might hold up better than the alternative, but that doesn't mean there aren't any better hypotheticals that are also achievable. For multiply marginalized groups such as women, LGBTQ people, atheists, and religious minorities within oppressed nations, national liberation is merely a step towards full liberation from hierarchical structures. The persistent appeal to nationalism for its own sake in a post-colonial context would only serve as a distraction from their intersectional struggle at best, and as an active source for further persecution at worst. Okay, I see her point. It's like someone who supported. It's like a quote about the space exploration that the Earth is the cradle of humanity, but one cannot always live in a cradle. Or a better quote would be, a ship is perfectly safe within a harbor, but it's not built to stay in the harbor. This is what I think. This is what I think Nina is trying to build upon. National liberation, or the idea of liberating oneself within one's own nation, has been a useful tool when it comes to dismantling external oppression. However, various forms of internal oppression can also result from the way that that nation has been put together, and now that nation becomes a target. Of course, the counterpoint is that by instead delving into support from international organizations, as the subtitle of this this article alluded to, you can arguably be told to resort once again to external imperialism, or at least that's the line that is often told within a nationalist sphere. Look at all, for example, with all the anti-EU discourse that comes up. But I think that would be a very reductive and very simplistic way of looking at it, because unlike the empires of old, this international cooperative associations such as the European Union aren't really maintained by force. They are maintained by the agreement of all participants to to stick it out and to continue to work together for their specific goals. And one can step out of that agreement, such as the United Kingdom did, and then utterly collapse to such an extent that most similar initiatives from within the EU have gone silent in a very limited time span. Let's see. Last paragraph. Ultimately, radical queer and feminist cosmopolitanism, okay, that's a word, is not about a ruggedly individualistic disentanglement from one's ethnic and cultural origins. Anti-nationalism does not align with Western hegemony either, and assuming the opposite only positions Western values as the default. Instead, it is about taking a critical approach to your culture, relentlessly challenging patriarchal norms that render marginalized communities within it alienated, and asserting that it is traditional customs that should adapt to our liberatory standards, not vice versa. I very much, very much, I hope that was picked up by the mic, agree with that, because something that comes up in Romania, which is my birth country, is just how much emphasis comes into folklore, and by that I mean music, garb, particular habits, etc. I think there is a lot of agrotourism that gets done throughout Romania, where you have people from outside who look to have a more traditional or old school type of vacation, and where they go to basically glimpse at the past, so to speak. And while that may have its merits in terms of how to reassess how to assess one's own connection to one's environment, it also more or less builds upon a less than happy cultural and traditional grounding that still leaves a lot of people on the margins of society. And the best idea and the best way to do so would be to adapt those customs, those traditions, in order to allow for a broader coalition, broader integration within the national community of the people that would have previously or otherwise been removed from it. It is up to all of us as internationalist feminists and queer liberationists to tear down oppressive values within our own national culture and then generously share its vibrant parts. Thank you. I've kind of said the same thing in the form of music, food, clothes, poetry, etc., with the rest of our global community. Patriarchy is the knife that deepens the open wounds on the earth that are national borders. And we can heal our planet by radically transforming the connection to our roots. So yeah, in many ways, me and her, we arrive at similar conclusions. We have similar roots, similar influences, and that influences the place where we arrive. And I think, and that is overall a pretty strong conclusion. So yeah, this has been the ungovernable feminist, and something or other about what it is that makes her a distinctive figure within this intellectual sphere. Sorry about that. And that was this video as well. Thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed it, well then please like the video and maybe even share it wherever you think others will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the article itself or to my comments on it, that's what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also, as I have already mentioned, have a main channel where I talk about all kinds of book-related and literature topics, a link to which you will find in the description down below. Right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. Additionally, you have the option of supporting me on Patreon, where depending on the level at which you pledge, you'll receive various perks, the specifics of which I'll allow you to uncover for yourselves. And if none of that really sounds in any way interesting to you, then I suggest you go ahead and check through the backlog of this of this channel, because as you'll find, it is A, varied, and B, extensive. Until next time, I have been the One Take Man.